Welcome into Snap, Tackle, and Flop, the brand new talk podcast about college football for the 2019 and 2020 season. I am your host, Keshawn, and I'm joined here in the booth with my two buddies, Tyler
How you doing?
and Leo.
Howdy.
All right, let's get started.
Okay, so I think the first order of business we should have for today is we should talk about the debate we were having off the air yesterday when we were looking over the AP poll. And Alabama and Clemson are 1 and 2, no surprise. Okay, so really quick, Keshawn, who would you have number one?
You know, man, I got to go with Clemson. Just because Clemson is the one team that gave Alabama a challenge last year. But even beyond that, Clemson to me just seems like they're more of a well put together team. They've got a few pieces on the offense coming back. Now, the defense is going to have a lot of holes on it. However, right now, I do agree with the preseason poll putting Clemson at number one.
Yeah, so I'd kind of agree. Not completely on all your points, but I do think Clemson should be number one right now. I think they've proven it, obviously, over the past end of the last season, obviously. But with the departures on the defensive line, I don't think you can really replace that, which might end up being a problem. And also, I think Alabama, solid at number two, is going to probably step it up with a lot of the new defense that's coming in and replacing some of the issues we had last year as far as linebacker. I think the leadership standpoint, we're going to improve a lot with people like Dylan Moses.
I'm floored. I thought this was going to go the other way.
If you look at the stats from last year, though, I mean, let's look at Tua. Tua last year, he had just right under 4,000 yards for passing last year, and then he had I'm telling you, he was really a key part of the offense. But you put that X factor in there, Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts was right there and had just about 800 yards himself. So the thing with it is, even with Tua leading the offense, and you look at the fact that Damian Harris had, which he's not here this year, but Damian Harris had about 900 yards rushing. I think the offense at Alabama is going to be hopping. Well, and we've already got a ton of wide receiver talent out here. Jerry Jeudy, I'm telling you, he's going to be the guy to watch this year, just because he's going to be if he gets open, he's taking it for 6, excuse me, and that this wide receiving core that Nick Saban has right here at Bama, it ain't going away no time soon. And I'm telling you, even if Tua's not under center, just say you have Mac Jones, say you have Tua's younger brother, Paul Tyson. We don't know who's going to be that third backup quarterback at this moment. But you think about it, any guy under center, they've got players around them to be able to make plays. And that's what's going to be happen on the offensive side of the ball this year. But more or less, I've got to agree that defense is going to be key. Now, Alabama has lost a lot of talent. Quentin Williams going to the Jets, and a lot of other talent around here. I believe that it's going to have to come down to the defense stepping up and making plays. If you look at what happened the last couple of years, Alabama got beat on third down a lot of the time. I mean, it'd be 2nd and 20, and Alabama would legit get it'd be 2nd and 20, and here they go. They made a play for loss, but here they come again. Whoever they're playing, they make the first down by some lucky play, but even not then, it's just the defense. It's not covering. So I think Saban's big thing this coming up this season is gonna have to be, how can we get off the field on third down?
Okay, wait. Y'all both would have Clemson number one today. That blows my mind. So in the AP poll, 52 voters had Clemson number one. 10 had Alabama at number one.
I was curious about that.
I firmly expected all three of us to have Bama one to start this as our top team to start the season. I certainly do. I'm floored that y'all went the other way.
So, you know how I am. I'm a Bama fan. I'll admit it. I want my team to do well, and they tend to do better when they're not ranked number one. So I'm all for it. Clemson's a better team. Let's just let them play out the season and see what happens.
Okay, so off the air the other day, we got in a discussion. And okay, so Alabama and Clemson, they're both going to play South Carolina this year, and they're both going to play Texas A&M this year. And those games will the difference in the schedule will be, Alabama will be at South Carolina and at A&M, and Clemson gets both of those games at home. But they're going to play both those two opponents. So they have 10 unique opponents this year. If you take out the 3 non-conference games, or 2 non-conference games for Clemson, the 3 non-conference games for Alabama that no one expects to be that competitive, there's only 9 games that we're talking about that matter. And if you take out the common opponents, that's 7. I argued the other day off the air that if both teams ran the table and they both look similarly impressive, I don't know that I would give Bama that much benefit of the doubt strength of schedule wise. And I might have Clemson number 1, or at least consider having them number 1 with I'm not going to give Alabama the usual benefit of the doubt with the schedule that I would normally in other years. And y'all both disagreed with me. So I'm curious, I guess just why don't you explain that? Why don't you explain your points? Y'all both sort of thought that Alabama has a much more significant strength of schedule than Clemson.
I wouldn't say much. I would say they're very close.
I mean, I want to be on. I'll be very frank. Both Alabama and Clemson schedules are fairly easy. And the only reason I say easy, and I don't want to confuse this with the fact of, when I say easy, I don't want to just say that, okay, they're just going to run through their schedules easy. But you got to understand, yeah, you can call it the Bama effect. Yeah, you can call it the Clemson effect. But let's just look at the conferences top to bottom. The SEC is built to last. I mean, every week in the SEC is going to be a grind. And the thing about it is, in the SEC, you've got teams in week in and week out that are gonna win games they're not supposed to. Let's look at Auburn in that sense. Auburn, but they might not be the same team that they're going to be here in September that they'll be in October. Granted, any team for that matter. But at the same time, the SEC is just a more competitive conference. Not necessarily that Alabama has an easier schedule or Clemson has an easier schedule, but the SEC is just built to play more physical, more well-rounded football. Now,
okay,
ACC,
so hold up. If they both ran the table and they both, let's assume game control, game flow, margin of victory, it's all sort of comparable. If they both run the table, both win their conference, who are you having number 1, Clemson or Alabama?
Alabama.
So
Alabama.
You gotta factor 2 things in with Alabama putting them number 1. You're saying the whole conference win that?
Yes, win the conference.
So in that case, obviously they beat Georgia, which is a lot more impressive than whatever 5-loss team Clemson will have beaten the ACC championship. But
exactly.
The other thing, even just not winning conference, the sort of things that I think make their schedule better for Alabama is the teams like LSU, the teams like Auburn, where their best team they're playing is A&M. Debatably Syracuse. I'm not really sold on them. I just think that's the typical Clemson. They lost to Pitt 3 years ago or 2 years ago and won the national championship. I think their coach doesn't motivate for regular season games as well as Nick Saban does. So they lose those trap games. And that's why Syracuse, I think, has given them so much challenge. I don't think they're as good as A&M. But the other thing with the SEC that you have to deal with, if you ever look at the recruiting rankings, it's consistently like 10 teams in the top 20. It's way head and shoulders above what the ACC has. That may not translate to overall rankings at the end of the year, but a whole year of having to play defensive linemen that are twice as big with more depth can wear you down, and we saw it clearly with Alabama's injuries last year.
Yes.
How significant is it for you that Clemson gets the SEC games at home, the Texas A&M and South Carolina, and Alabama is on the road twice for both of those?
Well, if you look at that, I mean, let's be honest. Road tests are way more of a better test of a team's ability to adapt and be able to really be able to be physical. Because think about it like this: if you got a home game, yeah, I do give a little bit of home field advantage. Does play a big factor, especially in the SEC when we get around about October, November, because the crowd knows that this game means much more. It just means that much more. And if you think about it, like, okay, we'll just take a game that's been kind of like one of those type things. Now, Alabama, LSU. Alabama, LSU, we know Alabama's a physical team. Now LSU hasn't scored at home against Alabama in a couple of seasons, but the thing about it is, it's still the weight and the gravity of having to go to Death Valley and play that game, whether it be at 9 or in the afternoon. Saban's, I want to say it was his third or fourth season here in Alabama. Or maybe it might have been the second or third. But I think when he went down to Death Valley during the afternoon game, and he had to play LSU in the afternoon. The thing is, it wasn't night at Death Valley, but it's just the fear of having to go to Death Valley. Ever since going to Death Valley at night, it's one of those things. It's not easy to play at that place, and that's what I think. And that's why I think home field advantage, it plays a big weight. So if you're going on the road playing these games, South Carolina, Alabama's going to win that game, I believe. But even still, like having to go on the road to be tested playing in a hostile environment is going to test you as a team, how you adapt, how do you trust your receivers, and really how you're going to be able to really act in a big game situation.
So to be clear, and I think I may have misspoke earlier, the Clemson also has to travel to South Carolina. That's a right game for them. So I'm curious then when y'all flip then. So I'm assuming after the first week, and again, assuming everything stays, relatively even between the teams other than opponents, Alabama will beat Duke the first week. Clemson will have Georgia Tech. I assume y'all are still voting Clemson number one.
Do you want unbiased opinions? Because if I'm being biased, I'm gonna have Alabama number 4 at the last week, even if we're undefeated.
Okay,
I want all the smoke. Okay. So you're saying after week 1?
Yeah.
Yeah, no changes.
Okay.
I wouldn't have any changes as well, just because we really haven't learned anything. If Alabama beats Duke 59-0, and Georgia Tech somehow, the only way I would change is if Georgia Tech somehow keeps it a close game between them and Clemson, or pulls off.
But we're gonna assume it's all relatively even. So Alabama has New Mexico State, Clemson has A&M. I know you're not changing week 2. Week 3, Alabama goes at South Carolina, Clemson goes at Syracuse. Still status quo?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
I might add some first place votes to Clemson if they've convincingly won both those games, but I know that's not really what we're.
Okay, so Southern Miss and Charlotte are the next week for the two teams. Alabama plays Ole Miss, and Clemson travels to UNC in week 5.
As it stands, yeah, because I don't know anything about Ole Miss. Depends on if they're good or not.
Okay. They both have byes week 6. This will be interesting. Alabama goes to A&M week 7. Clemson hosts Florida State. Do y'all switch back then? Are we sticking with Clemson so far?
I'm gonna have to say
just yes or no. Just Alabama or Clemson. You're changing?
Clemson.
I would still keep Clemson ahead in that. Yes.
Okay, so then it's Bama's got Tennessee next week. Clemson's at Louisville.
Same.
Yep.
Bama's got Arkansas. Clemson's got Boston College.
Same.
Might drop us to 3.
Bama's off next week. Clemson has Wofford. I know you won't change. Bama has LSU at home. Clemson's at NC State. This has got to be when y'all change, right?
I don't think so.
I'm actually gonna go on a limb here. I'm gonna change and put Alabama at number 1 at that point. Only because at that point of the season, Alabama's taken on, let's see, Texas A&M. Well, we're not going to even count Tennessee, but at least Texas A&M and LSU. And I believe that LSU team could be a top 5, if not a top 10 team at that point.
But LSU always looks good until Bama comes.
Yeah.
Or until
my point is, if Alabama beats a top 5 team,
I don't think they'll be top 5, but
but
just
a
because of
top
what they'll
10
have to play
team.
before then, because I think they'll have some losses. My big thing is I don't think it's as impressive for us to beat. I think it's a hard game, and it's part of what makes our schedule so much harder because it's physical, it's tough. However, I still haven't seen LSU be able to consistently put up any offense on us. Orgeron said he's changing the offense, but I don't believe anyone in purple and gold saying that. I really don't think it's going to be super impressive for us to win, so I don't think I'd push us above just for beating them. All we have to do is score, which... Go ahead.
I was just going to say, for the record, I didn't ask myself this question, but I would probably switch to depending on how Clemson looks at A&M, if they get a win there or get a win against A&M at home, I'll probably switch and I'd probably stick with Clemson. Again, assuming all things are equal, I'd probably stick with Clemson until LSU. I at that point, Bama beating LSU, if that team looks, even if I don't know that I think it's a top 5 team, but I think LSU has a good chance to be top 15, top 12.
I think the resume will be better. I think Alabama's resume will be better.
Yeah, which I would switch at that point. So I guess, Leo, when would you switch? Would it be after rivalry weekend?
Yeah, because I think Auburn's going to be. That's for another topic for another time, but I'm scared of Auburn this year. Very scared of Auburn this year.
So you think so you think the difference in the schedule is negligible until you get, I guess you think the difference maker is going to be, I guess, adding that trip to Auburn and then the conference championship game, assuming both teams go. You just think that's going to be what's going to put Alabama.
That clearly, and then just the slugfest that's going to be LSU and Miss State. Both of those games consistently are slugfest. You look at last year; those were the only games not the only games, but until the postseason, those were like the only games we were pretty much below 50. Other than, let's see, A&M was 45, Missouri was 39, but that was just a weird. Anyway, we had struggles offensively against those two teams. They didn't do much to us. I think first-year coach at Miss State, he's developing. He's going to be better on offense this year. They got the transfer from Penn State that coach obviously knew because he was from Penn State. I think they'll be a better offense this year. I don't know if it's necessarily a trap game, but it's definitely going to be physical. We've seen their defensive line. They put first-rounders out. They might be struggling because they did put like 3 first-rounders in this year, so maybe a little different.
Well, I mean, let's be honest here. I will say this: rivalry weekend, Alabama, Auburn. We're just going to say Alabama's going to win that game, just hypothetically here. We go to Atlanta the next week, play a Georgia or a Florida team that I think would be ranked in the top 10 either way. How can't you have Alabama at number 1 at that point? And if not, just say Alabama wins the SEC championship, how could you not have Alabama at number 1 at that point?
I don't think you can. After the SEC championship, absolutely, you have to have them number 1. If it happens that way. Unless somehow whatever team out of the other conference in the ACC goes like 1 loss or something like that, but I don't see that happening.
I mean, there's no team in the ACC, I believe. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. Clemson is the top dog in the ACC. Everybody's fighting for second right now. I mean, let's be honest. Florida State,
do you think every team in the ACC could potentially be second?
I believe every team in the ACC, as it stands before we start play today, is playing for second.
I think every team is playing in that other division is playing for that spot. I don't think second. I think Syracuse might be the clear-cut second in the ACC, but they won't be in the championship. So
yeah. I mean, what about Duke, Keshawn? You got Duke even sniffing the top 3 in the ACC at the end of the year?
Come on now, Duke.
Hey, it looked pretty good for Alabama.
Season, I'd say if Duke was this basketball season, I'd say, hey, that was a great out of conference game. But come on here, Duke. I mean, I'm an Alabama. I'll be honest with you, I'm an Alabama fan myself. But here's the problem with it, Duke. Come on, man. Like that's like saying you're about to play the high school team that everybody schedules for homecoming because you know you're going to lose, because you know you're going to win that game. That's the thing, Duke. There's no team in the ACC I believe, after Clemson that can really, really even hold a torch to Clemson. And like Leo said here in the beginning of the broadcast, the thing is, whoever goes and plays Clemson in the ACC championship game is going to probably be either just barely bowl eligible or maybe 8-4. Come on now. I just don't see a team in the ACC that can catch Clemson as far as on the other side of the conference. Now,
I don't see another team that can catch A&M.
Well, hold on. Let's bring up another point here because I just had.
Wait, what? Hold on.
What
I
mean by that is I don't think there's another team in the ACC that's equivalent to A&M, and that's potentially the third hardest team we play.
But okay,
not including Georgia.
You can break it down by East and West, but let's look at it like this. I mean, let's just kind of do.
Save the SEC for next week. Save the SEC for next week.
I'll save the SEC for next week, but let's look at something else from this perspective because I just had a thought here. Just talking championship games here real quick. Clemson and Alabama both make it to their, let's just say Clemson and Alabama both make it to their conference championship games. Which game do you think is going to be more physical to watch?
Definitely not the Clemson one.
That's my point. And that's why, and then going back to the question, who has the better schedule as far as like who has a bit more challenging schedule? The Alabama does. And I'm not saying that their schedule is so challenging. I'm saying that the grind and physicality that it takes to play in the SEC is just unrivaled. And the ACC doesn't have that type of caliber.
And I think we really need to specify when we say the SEC grind because people roll their eyes at it. People that aren't SEC fans, they think it's stupid because all they look at is the final records. And it's fair to say that you see bowl records, SEC doesn't always do better. The records of the SEC, you'll have a lot of teams that aren't ranked at the end compared to the beginning. I really do think the big things as far as physicality and what takes a toll on you is how much bigger the recruits are in the SEC, how much bigger the players end up becoming. It's massive difference.
I wouldn't make such a strong argument if Bama was in the East too. If Alabama's playing in the SEC, if Bama switched places with Georgia right now, and you wanted to do the strength of schedule between Alabama and Clemson, I think it loses a lot of luster. But the West doesn't look especially strong this year.
No.
Miss State has to make a leap. Who knows about Ole Miss? We'll get to it later, but next week when we talk more about the SEC. But I don't know. I probably agree with y'all that Alabama's schedule is more difficult, but it's probably more negligible to me than it is to y'all. I don't think it's going to be. I think in years past, just sort of transition to the playoff. I think in years past, Alabama's benefited greatly from being able to argue strength of schedule. We went through the grind to get here, and no matter what the record is for Alabama, they can always fall back on that, and any loss or any sort of blemishes the team has entering the postseason, they're kind of able to shrug them off because they have that strength of schedule. I think at least when you're comparing Clemson and Alabama this year, if everything else looks relatively even, I don't think Alabama has that strength of schedule argument this year. I don't think it's going to be a difference maker in years past. Now, you don't have to – Clemson's only one team, so, you don't have to – you can lose to Clemson. You can lose argument to Clemson and be second, so it's not that big a deal. But
yeah,
I think it's interesting. I don't know. To me, it's interesting that the schedule, at least that it's interesting that I think that the schedule isn't that strong. And I think that might show up in the playoff rankings later this year.
I think part of it's just how awful Mississippi and Arkansas were last year.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest here. Ole Miss. I'm gonna be honest with you. Joe Moorhead this year, he better come out swinging because that.
You mean Miss State?
Yes. No, I'm talking about. I said Ole Miss. I'm saying Ole Miss, and let's be honest here, Arkansas come on now. Chad Morris, no way. But I'm also talking about Mississippi State too when I say this. Mississippi State had a chance of a lifetime last year with their quarterback. I mean, come on here. There's no way with that team. If anybody else was coaching that team last year, just say Dan Mullen would have stayed at Mississippi State, I think they would have actually. And I should probably wash my mouth out after saying this. I think they could have actually even beat Alabama and maybe came in second in the West. Maybe.
I'm gonna put a hashtag doubt on that.
Regular season.
I'm gonna put a hashtag doubt on that.
I mean,
at first I thought you just said hashtag. I thought you were gonna say if Dan Mullen hadn't left.
Nah.
Yeah, if Dan Mullen had not left Mississippi
I don't
State.
think Nick Marshall was really that, or not Nick Marshall. No, what is his name? What was Fitzgerald?
Nick Fitzgerald.
Yeah, Nick Fitzgerald. I don't think he was that great, especially. I know it's cliche to say, but he was trash at throwing the football. It was almost like the coaching made him trash because in years before that, I think he had pretty good stats throwing the football, but last year he couldn't throw it.
Put Nick Fitzgerald, put that whole Mississippi State team. Say you had a coaching staff like Alabama first 9 games of the regular season last year. Do you win?
Well, they had hell of talent. They had like I said earlier, they had a lot of people drafted really early, especially defensively.
Yeah, that's true.
They could have been a lot better than they were. I do agree with that. But again, first-year coach, he had different philosophy coming in, taking over another guy's people. I didn't really expect much of them last year, but it was physical.
Yeah. Not his players. Miss State is not a place that a coach is probably going to come in and show up in year one.
Yeah.
But Keshawn can tell us all about his opinions on Miss State next week when we talk about the SEC.
When we talk about the SEC. Good idea.
Hey, I'm saving the SEC for next week. Okay.
Right now, I just want to hear. Okay, so do we even need to? I don't think we need to waste time. I think in our playoff predictions, we all have Alabama and Clemson. Does anybody not have Alabama, and does anybody not have Clemson?
No, those two are at the top of the list. Period.
Same.
Yeah, I agree, and I mean I don't think it really matters that much what order you put them in.
Really.
Okay, let's just. Does anyone not have Oklahoma in their top 4?
I don't.
You don't, Leo? Does it? I take it you do have Oklahoma.
I have them 3.
I also have them 3. Keshawn, explain why you don't have Oklahoma. Don't tell us who your other teams are. Just tell us why you don't think it's going to be Oklahoma's year.
I don't think it's going to be Oklahoma's year now. Let's be honest here. Do I think Lincoln Riley's a great coach? Of course. Oklahoma's just that team that they don't have no defense. And while we play in the Big 12, it's going to be one of those places that doesn't play defense. Is the offense that they're going to have under with quarterback now named head starting quarterback Jalen Hurts. Is their system going to be able to are they going to be able to run the same type of offense that they ran in years past with Jalen Hurts to be really a powerhouse as they've been in years past?
So I see what you're saying. I understand the concern. I think they will be able to. I really think not only do they have a bad defense, but the Big 12 also all has very terrible defenses.
They all have terrible
So
defenses.
even throwing Jalen Hurts in there, who we saw come in several times last year late games, and of course in the SEC Championship, he looked like a much improved passer. Now, admittedly, a lot of that was mop-up duty against bad teams, but the Georgia game was a very strong light because that was a good defense.
Sure.
But the big thing I think is whether or not Texas is actually legit. And I know there's a lot of hype around them. I don't really know what to make of it because I don't think a bowl win, and we're going to sound stupid saying this, but I really don't think Georgia was all in that game because they definitely did not play Texas the way they played us. But yeah, I'm not going to use that to say that Texas is head and shoulders the best team in the Big 12 now. So I think as long as Oklahoma can get through that, I think they'll be quite all right. Not really going to have any other challenges. I think we might have lost Tyler. I think his connection went out.
Well, we can keep going
Oh,
for
of
now.
course.
So Leo, that kind of get. I guess let's talk about this. Who are your other two teams? Who are your two teams?
Well, my two teams. One of them's Oklahoma, of course, as I said.
Okay.
My number 4 team right now is going to be UGA, and I know that's going to make people mad, but
You're gonna put Georgia in
well,
there?
just look at what we have as other potentials. So the Big 12, I have Oklahoma. I think that's going to be the Big 12 representative. The Pac-12,
Okay.
I know there's hype behind Utah. I don't know where the heck that came from.
Where?
I guess they have a really good defensive line that
The
I,
Utes. Come on now.
I don't see them taking that step, especially considering Oregon's in that conference. USC, I don't think USC is going to be that good, but I think they'll have a good offensive line and they're going to have big physical guys that can deal with the Utah line. I think the Pac-12 is going to do the traditional thing it does and cannibalize itself, and we won't have a Pac-12 representative as usual. Now,
I mean,
this would be a year I would put the Big Ten in, but
You're putting the Big Ten in.
no, I would, but
Yeah,
Urban
that's what I'm
Meyer,
saying. You're gonna put a Big Ten team in.
not this year because Urban Meyer is gone,
Yeah.
and I don't see Mr. finishes third in the West every year, John Hart or Jim Harbaugh coming in and winning it.
Hey,
And I
man,
definitely
I'm gonna
don't
be
see
honest.
those other teams getting in there.
Hey,
So I think it's going to be a very opportune year for Georgia to get in, as long as they don't screw up in their regular season.
Okay. I mean, you're gonna hate these last two teams, but to combat your Oklahoma and Georgia, I'm gonna put in Texas and Notre Dame.
Texas and
So
Notre Dame. I didn't think much of
hold
Texas
on,
and Notre
hold on,
Dame.
hold on, hold on. Let me explain. I think Texas will win the Big 12 this year, beat Oklahoma twice. And then I'm going to be honest with you. That game in South Bend this year, or is it in Georgia, I believe? Is it in Georgia or South Bend? I believe. Either
What
way,
game?
the Georgia and Notre
Oh,
Dame game,
Georgia
is it
Notre
in
Dame.
Georgia?
That's a good question. Let me
Yeah, is
look
it
it
in
up.
Georgia or South Bend? Either way, I think wherever that game's hosted, I'm going to give the edge to Notre Dame because
It's in
Notre
Georgia.
Dame went out on okay, so they're going to Athens and play that game. Notre Dame went out on a sour note last year, and that's the problem that I think is going to be their you can say Achilles heel, or you can really even say that their focus point is this year. Because think about it, Notre Dame lost to Clemson so bad last year in that semifinal game that it was just embarrassing. But they went through the whole season undefeated. So I mean, do I give do I like Georgia to win that game? I think if Georgia drops a game this year, it's going to be Notre Dame. It's going to be a night game. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't really know the network, but I'm sure it's going to be a night game, and that game's
CBS
just going to tell
Country.
us a lot about Georgia. It's going to tell us a lot about it's going to tell us a lot about Georgia and a lot about Notre Dame. And if Notre Dame can get out of that game with either by 1 point, 2 points, or even more, I think it's going to really be something to say. It's going to be something to say.
I agree with you if they win that game. I, however, do
Yeah.
not. I don't see any way they win that game. I know it's hard to say after just one game, but after watching that game they played against Clemson, it kind
Yeah.
of confirmed my biases towards saying that Notre Dame was just not really worth being there. The other thing is, I've heard a lot about Georgia. All these people thinking they're going to drop off because of their wide receiver core being less
Yeah.
deep. See, I just don't understand that. I know wide receivers are obviously important, but they have a lot of talent there. And everywhere
Yeah.
else, the sort of places where you need actual experience, they're reloading, like quarterback, offensive line. They've got a
Sure.
great offensive line.
Sure.
Defensive line's going to be good. They've got a really good secondary. The only weakness people are pointing out is the wide receiving core,
Okay.
which I know they lost a lot of people with experience, and they have, I think, some very
Yeah.
low number of snaps. However, there are a lot of 5 stars and 4 stars. I really think you see people like Jalen Waddle come in for Alabama as a true freshman and do what they do. Henry Ruggs did that. Jerry Jeudy did that. I think you see a lot of these really talented wide receivers step in as freshmen right away and make a big difference. I don't think it's going to be as much of an issue for them as people are trying to make it.
Okay. Well, hey, let's go to commercial real quick.
All right, I'll pause the podcast for now.
All right. All right, we are back. And right before the break, me and Leo were talking about our college football playoff selections and who we thought were going to be in the final, who we're going to thought were going to be in the finals. So let's kind of bring everybody back up to speed. Leo, who did you have in your final?
So I had Clemson and Alabama, of course, 1 and 2, and then number 3 I had Oklahoma, and number 4 I had UGA.
Okay, nice picks. I like those. And I had Alabama, Clemson, number 1 and 2, not necessarily in that order, but I had Notre Dame and Texas as my last two.
Okay, so Leo had we both have Oklahoma, and then Leo had Georgia, and you had Did you say Notre Dame in Texas?
Notre Dame and Texas.
Okay. Okay, so my fourth team, I think will also surprise y'all. Do y'all want to guess what it is?
Washington?
No.
Utah?
No.
Okay, good. I was gonna be mad if you
I've
said
got
Utah.
to go with. I'm gonna say it's gonna be. Actually, I'm not sure.
Michigan?
Could it be Texas A&M?
No, it's Michigan.
Yeah, I called it.
Big Ten. Come on, dude. Come on. Come on. Hey, I'm gonna let you go, but I'm gonna grill you afterwards.
I just think I think Michigan's schedule it just is relatively favorable. I actually think Ohio State has the a much easier schedule to navigate, but Michigan gets that game at home this year, and I just can't imagine that they're not going to come out on top against a first-year head coach at home.
That's kind of what I was saying earlier. I mean, I wasn't saying Michigan in, but I was saying my thing was I was thinking Ohio State would usually be my only Big Ten entry. However, I don't even know who Ryan Day is. Like, really? I don't think they have a chance with this guy. But yeah, I can see that.
Let's be honest here. Now I told you I was going to grill you, buddy. Michigan, Jim Harbaugh can't beat Ohio State. 3 years. 3 years. Urban Meyer had his number. Last year he should have won.
Where's Urban now? He's not there.
Urban's sitting at Fox right now, doing a pregame show.
Is he going to be able to beat? Is he going to be able to beat him from Fox?
But let's be honest.
Look, real quick for my contender. This is Michigan's schedule. Host Middle Tennessee. Host Army. Bye week at Wisconsin. Host Rutgers. Host Iowa. 2 Illinois. 2 Penn State, which is actually the game I'm maybe the most nervous about. Host Notre Dame. At Maryland. They host Michigan State. There's a bye in between those 2 games. Then at Indiana. Then they host Ohio State. They have a lot of their strongest games at home, and the ones that they have to hit the road for, they have byes with the exception of the Penn State game. The Penn State game is maybe it's right before that Notre Dame game.
Are they in happy?
It's on the road, but I think Michigan's schedule, they can take a loss in a game as long as they win their division and then win the conference. I think they can take a loss. So they really, in my opinion, from the outset, they can lose a game. It just can't be against Ohio State.
Nope. And that's the problem. It's going to be against Ohio State. The problem is Jim Harbaugh's kryptonite. You remember the old Superman cartoons, kryptonite, how Superman had a kryptonite? That's how it is with Ohio State and Michigan. Jim Harbaugh's kryptonite is Ohio State. I don't care who's the coach at Ohio State is. Ohio State is going to find a way to win that game somehow. And the fact of the matter is, yeah, Urban's gone. Yeah, the team isn't quote unquote what it was, but Urban still was there to recruit those guys when they were there, even before the scandal that came out last year. And the thing about it is, those guys are there and all in for that team. And even though that scandal didn't necessarily affect those students there playing for Urban, they rallied last year in the first couple of games and played for their coach. So let's just be here. even though all those players are gonna not have Urban Meyer as the coach, so to speak, and even though he's not there, they're still his players that he went out and recruited. So I believe that Ohio State is still going, depending on the culture this year, I think Ohio State is still going to be the team that stops Big Jim Harbaugh. And I'm going to make a bold prediction here. If Jim Harbaugh loses that game, I think he's gone. I don't even think if he even went undefeated in the season. If he loses that game, I think he's gone.
What if Michigan's 10-2?
I mean, 10-2 is great, but okay, let's look at it from this perspective. 10-2 is great, but let's go back to Mike Shula. Mike Shula went 10-2 in 05, but
yeah, well, once, and not the year.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
That was Mike 1 year, and that wasn't the year they sent Mike Shula away.
Hey, Mike Shula had a good year at Alabama that year, but let's look at it from this perspective. He still lost to Auburn, and that's the way it goes. If you lose your rivalry game, it doesn't matter what you did throughout the regular season. You're still going to get crucified on that rivalry game, and that's the problem with Alabama and Auburn. Excuse me, that's the problem with Ohio State and Michigan.
Did he just put an ST in crucified?
I didn't hear it. But
No.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Did he say crucified?
I wouldn't doubt it.
No, it's crucified. You know my Alabama English, but the thing about it is, it doesn't matter. Ohio State and Michigan. It's like Michigan and Michigan State. It's like your little brother.
No, it
doesn't matter.
It is a 14-game streak, I think. It's 14 or 13. I think it's 14 games so far that Ohio State has beat them. I think.
So and
Kentucky beat Florida.
Hey, that was a 30. They snapped a 31-game win streak.
We're living in a new world.
But hey, they might have snapped a 31-game win streak. That's a great thing.
See, there's a website for this. All right, 2,827 days since Michigan has beaten Ohio State.
Hey, Tennessee hasn't won against Alabama since 2006. So I don't know how many days that's been. But the point of what I'm trying to say here, the point of what I'm trying to say here is that Michigan can go and win every game for the rest, can win every game in the regular season, except that Ohio State game. Jim Harbaugh has gone out for Michigan. They're looking for a new coach. Who it could be, no idea. But we'll probably revisit that when it gets closer to the end of the season.
Leo, I'm curious. Who do you think is more likely to make the playoffs, Notre Dame or Michigan?
Michigan.
Okay.
I don't believe in Notre Dame. I had my doubts, my very severe doubts going into last season or last playoff. It was extremely proven against Clemson. I don't think they've gotten any better this year. I never believe in Notre Dame.
Do you think they will subconsciously get punished? If Notre Dame has a special season, do you think they'll get punished for how they were last year? If there's a loss, do you think they'll get knocked?
I think as far as the eye test goes, I think it'll almost be factored into the eye test. Like, it won't be so much results from this year, but basically just that memory of what they were. Let me see if I can find their schedule for 2018 so I can remind everyone of how easy their schedule was too, and how much they struggled.
While you're doing that, did y'all go over Notre Dame's schedule for this year?
No, but hold on. Let me go back to this though, because Leo did make a good point here. That I will say this: the only thing Notre Dame, and this is Notre Dame's big kryptonite, and we've been saying this for years, even off the air, no matter what. But here's the problem: Notre Dame is not in the conference. How are you I mean, don't get me wrong. Yes, I got them in my Final Four, and we've seen the committee do some crazy things over the years. But here's the thing: Notre Dame's not in the conference. That's my only beef with Notre Dame. If you want to be in the CFP, get in the conference. I mean, it's like this: your basketball schools in the ACC, your basketball teams in the ACC. Here's the problem: if Notre Dame got in the conference, just say the ACC or the Big Ten, whichever one, doesn't matter. If they got in the conference, I believe that they'll be more respected and they'll be more well-rounded. But the fact that they're independent and they won't join a conference is their only downfall. You can play yes, they can schedule top opponents every year, but the problem is if they don't join a conference, that's what's going to happen. That can be the only thing that really hurts them in the long run. And I mean,
I think it would
go
hurt
ahead.
them. However, because obviously they had to go 12-0 last year, and still they should have been fourth ranked team, but they got third ranked team. So yeah, not having that 13th data point, as they say, the conference championship game, I think hurts them. But back to what I
Yeah,
was.
I think it's baked in.
Yeah, and I think it would help to join a conference, but there's no reason for them to do that. I mean, unless they do start getting left out, but they haven't had any issues where they've been getting left out. So
Notre Dame plays Georgia, USC, Stanford, Michigan, a bunch of ACC teams. I mean, Notre Dame has a solid schedule. Notre Dame has a similar, or maybe even a stronger schedule this year than the Irish might have if they were in a conference.
And let me read out especially the ACC. Let me read out last year's conference or their schedule last year real quick so I can explain to you why I think they won't be very good this year and their results with these games. So they started off Notre Dame versus Michigan, which respectable game, 24-17. Looked pretty good. We thought Michigan was going to be great at the beginning. Well, I didn't, but I thought they were going to be okay. But I think they were hyped up last year as usual. So it looked impressive. Then they go to Ball State and they beat them 24-16. That's a whole 8 points. That's a good game. Ball State,
that's a great game.
They're Cardinals, solid. They go to Vanderbilt the next week, beat them 22-17. They're really living on a prayer here. It's coming pretty close. They go to Wake Forest, and I'll give them this. They beat them 56-27. That's pretty big.
I mean, but it's Wake Forest.
It's Wake Forest. You're right. Go to Stanford, beat them 38-17. Virginia Tech, solid game, 45-23. Although Virginia Tech turned out being a lot worse than we thought they were going to be. Here's the kicker: the Pitt game. They were the ACC Coastal champs.
Yes,
I think Coastal.
Champs.
Yeah. However, they had 5 losses. But
yeah,
Notre Dame beat them with an astounding 5-point margin. Good job on them. They went to Navy, beat Navy by 22. Good. Struggled against Northwestern. Didn't struggle against Florida State. Here's what gave them all the hype: beating Syracuse. This kind of ties into why I don't think Syracuse is worth crap. They beat Syracuse 36-3. Everyone's like, "Oh God, Notre Dame's amazing," and then they go to USC, who wasn't even ranked, and they barely beat them 24-17. I just don't buy into the Notre Dame crap. I don't know if I will until they actually show something.
But here's my caveat to that. Okay, while and you're right. Yes, just say that Notre Dame, they're not in the conference right now, but just say they were in the ACC. Just put them in the Coastal Division, the division opposite of Clemson. If you put Notre Dame in that division, okay, in that sense, you're going to basically be saying, okay, they got to play all ACC opponents. But wouldn't in that case it be better? And wouldn't you say take their same record last year, put them in the championship game, in the ACC championship game? I'll say the result will be the same. But the point is, they would be more respected with that schedule being in a conference too. That's what I'm trying to get at. And I mean, they could still schedule those out of conference games. But the problem, what I see in this is Notre Dame, and I guess you're right. If Notre Dame kept getting left out, this would be more of a problem. But my problem is with this, I guess I'll say it like this: if Notre Dame cannot be in a conference and still go toe to toe and get into the CFP, then I think that with them being in a conference, that's going to make a stronger case for them to be able to really stand the test of time. Now, just even say this: if Notre Dame and Clemson went off in the ACC championship game, well, hey, look at it last year: SEC championship game, ACC championship game, 3 versus 4, 1 versus 3. I think I'll forget the numbers they were last year. But the point is, what I'm trying to say is, it would have been such a better weekend of football for that championship game, and that's why I think if you can't criticize Notre Dame getting left out in this if they go 12-0 again this season. Now,
Do you think Notre Dame's going 12-0?
I'm not saying they're going.
Well, you have them in your playoff predictions. So do you think an 11-1 or 12-0?
I'm gonna put them 11-1 right now. I've got
lost to Georgia.
We better have some lost teams.
Upset. Gonna call it upset.
At Georgia.
At Georgia. I'm calling upset right now. However, look, when I get to week 3, I might change my mind. But look, I'm telling you, I'm calling upset right now because Georgia. Well, here's the problem.
I'm betting the house that he changes his mind.
No, we're not betting anything. But the point of what I'm trying to say is you got to look at this. Georgia, to me, has got one team on their mind, which is Alabama.
I see what you did there.
They want to get. Yeah, you're right. What they want to do is Georgia's got one thing on their mind, and it's Alabama. They want to get to that championship game in Atlanta and play Bama once again. They have been on the cusp of beating Bama 3 times. And the thing about it is, of those 3 times that they were going to beat them, they didn't finish. Excuse me, twice. I'm sorry.
No, 3 times.
They were going to beat
3
them.
times.
Huh?
Chris Conley deciding to catch that stupid ball.
Why you?
2012.
What did Chris Conley do to you that you got to bring?
He's on the Jaguars, so now I'm worried.
Man, we're not.
Wait, Keshawn. Are you more confident in your Notre Dame prediction or Texas?
Texas making it to the playoffs?
Yeah, just making it. Not seeing it in the playoffs, but who are you more confident in making it?
I'm more confident in Texas making it to the playoffs
really?
than I am Notre Dame winning that game. But here's the case for that. Texas plays in the Big 12. Oklahoma, this is my thing. Oklahoma is going to lose twice this year to Texas. They're going to lose once at the Red River Showdown.
Why do you hate Jalen?
They're going to lose that game in the regular season. I mean, Texas. There's something in the juice out there in Texas. Back out in Austin, there's something in that juice out there. And the way they handled Georgia in that game, don't get me wrong, Georgia had a low morale after losing that game the way they did and did not getting in the CFP. But the point of what I'm trying to say, Texas has got a system out there where they believe that they can win and they can compete with the best teams in this country. And that's why I think they're going to run the table. They could have beat Oklahoma last year in the Big 12 championship game, but they didn't, and they lost, and Oklahoma got in. But here's the key. If Texas wins that game, here we go at this conversation again. Why shouldn't Texas be in?
They did have Kyler Murray come in there and score like 3 touchdowns in 3 minutes or something like that. So they're not going to. I don't think Jalen Hurts is going to be able to do that this year. However, I don't think they're going to be that close at the end of this.
Texas is going to have to get through LSU, Oklahoma State, and West Virginia just to get to the Oklahoma game.
Well, you could take the LSU game. Well, yeah, sure.
They don't need the LSU game.
I mean, Texas can lose a game, but they can't. Texas has to make it through the schedule. It's a tough schedule for Texas.
Texas can make it through the schedule, especially that West Virginia game, because I feel like West Virginia is a former shell of themselves. But the thing about it is, Oklahoma and the Red River Showdown. Yeah. I mean, I think at the Red River Showdown, we're going to find out what Texas team this is this season. And I believe if Texas has a couple close games between them, it's going to be one thing. However, here's the key. If Texas wins that Oklahoma game better than the way they won it last year off of that field goal, Texas is back, baby. I mean, I'm telling you, you can put the Longhorns up.
We're not doing that on this podcast. We're not saying Texas is back. That's not a thing.
I'm telling you
censor
Texas
that.
Is gonna be back.
Timestamp this. Go back. Censor that. Blur that out too.
Yeah, we're gonna put a horns down there too, so we can get flagged by the Big 12.
I'm telling you, Texas is gonna run the table this year.
I thought I was gonna be the only one. I thought I was going to be the only one with a bold prediction. I felt pretty bold predicting Michigan. And then Keshawn says Notre Dame and Texas. I
feel more confident in Texas.
We're going back in time seeing Notre Dame and Texas.
So I got to hit on one thing, Keshawn, in reference to your Notre Dame comments earlier about joining a conference before we move on. Sure. Do you really think having a conference championship would help them? Because think about it. If they're in the ACC this last year, they go to a conference championship, they're going to have to play Clemson.
Sure.
If they're in the Big 10, they're going to have to play Michigan. These are hard games, unless they somehow go to the Pac-12. These are going to be hard games that they'd have to play, which they don't have to play now.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll
But
benefit them unless they are actually good.
I mean, I see your point, but here's the key. Does Alabama have to play? Does Alabama, if they win their whole conference, if they win the whole western side of the conference, and their one East opponent, their two East opponents, do they have to go to Atlanta and play whoever won the SEC East every year? Does every team in the does the Big 12, who the best two teams who have
I
the
see
best
what you're
records, have to
saying,
play?
but what I'm saying
Does
here is
does the Big East and does the Big Ten have the East champion and the West champion every year? So my point is this: on Championship Saturday, if I went 12-0 and I'm sitting here at home watching everybody else play a championship game to either A, make a better case for why they should be in the CFP, or B, just play another game just to mark it off the schedule. The point of what I'm trying to say, or just because I have to play a championship game, then that should mean that you should get in the conference. And that's why I say Notre Dame should be in the conference, and they should be in the conference all the time, because
I know what you're
the
saying,
problem is,
but I don't think it'll help Notre Dame. Because I think if
I
they
mean,
have that conference championship game, they're going to lose it in every conference.
and so, I mean, get better.
Wait,
They're doing fine. They can get into the playoff
No,
without
I'm
playing a
saying
conference
Wait,
championship
that's-
game.
Why
Why
that's
change
interesting.
that?
Do we think Notre Dame would lose to every conference champion last year?
No, not the Pac-12.
Only two maybe. Looking at the Power Five,
So
I'd give them
Oklahoma,
3 out of 5.
Oklahoma, Alabama, Clemson. What about Ohio State?
They would have lost last year, Ohio State, for sure.
They would have lost last year to
They would've got
Ohio State
creamed.
team, so 4 out of 5.
That team
No,
beat
I
Michigan by
agree.
like 30.
They beat
Not
the
30,
Pac-12
but 20.
whoever
I
that
agree.
was.
That's interesting, but I agree. Keyshawn made some really good points. I'm not sure if he really landed at the end there, but he made some really good points. If Notre Dame could build up the perception and have the schedule that like Alabama and Georgia have had going into the SEC championship game, then there's a chance Notre Dame goes into a conference championship with a spot already locked up. But I will say Georgia wasn't in the playoff last year.
True, but
Georgia was a lock until they had to go to the playoff.
Here's the catch, though. I mean, sure, but that just makes it more competitive, and that's the thing. Sure, we could talk expansion if we wanted to, but here's the key. The thing about it,
But we're not talking about what we want. We're talking
about what's best for Notre Dame, dang it.
Yeah,
Notre Dame is a second-tier team. If they have a conference, no, but they're a second-tier team. If they go into a conference, they're going to lose to the conference championship every year, unless they actually get good. As they stand now, the best team they play is Michigan, maybe USC. That's
not
good for
every
them.
year. I think Notre Dame could win some conference championships.
I mean, let's be honest here. Let me say
yeah,
this.
They wouldn't win. It wouldn't be.
I think they're better off being able to run the table through it.
I agree.
Sure.
I agree. I think they're better off.
I'll give you that,
Keshawn is talking about when we need that extra compelling championship game. It would be great if Notre Dame was in there once every 4 years.
Exactly, and that's the thing.
But that has nothing to do with Notre Dame getting into the playoff.
And also, they can just stay independent and rely on Ohio State losing a game to like Purdue by 30 or losing 2 games in one season.
Like that's the whole key behind this. And I'll say this, I'll let it go, but look at it from this perspective. If every Power 5 conference has to play a championship game to be even be able to be in a CFP game, just to even get that last little, I'll say, game on the resume, so to speak. Just say this probably won't happen, but just say the Pac-12, UCLA and another team out in the Pac-12 who somehow, let me see who's in the north here, Oregon, UCLA and Oregon in the Pac-12 championship game. Here's the thing: if we have both those teams in the championship game, and they're playing on the same Saturday as all the other championship games, here's the key on that makes sense to me. If UCLA or Oregon is 12-0 and they're playing, Alabama and Georgia is playing in the SEC championship, and all the other teams that are playing these championship games are either undefeated or one loss, then here's the key. What would set Notre Dame apart in that? They would just be that 6 team there. They would be that 6 team. There would be I mean, I would take whoever had a better resume at that point from each of the Power Fives, and then I would put those 4 best teams in the playoff because that's what we're looking for. The 4 best teams in the playoffs. We're not looking for great schedule. We're not looking for, this, that, and the other. We're looking for the 4 best teams to put in the playoff to be able to play for a national championship. And that's what the fans want, and that's what we want.
Okay, so I agree with you on that scenario, but I think that scenario is rare, and most of the time they
It's
just
very
benefit.
rare.
Well, exactly. So they benefit by not being in a conference and just playing to what's more common. Anyway, we should move on to another topic.
I'll let you have
it. Keshawn, do you want to regale us with tales of college football lore from the past?
Or what, the 20s?
Well,
Are we going into the 20s?
Well, we'll pick up on that segment next week.
Okay. Starting next week, Keshawn will tell you what it was like to live in the 1920s and watch college football.
Yep. College football is celebrating their 150th year this year, and we're going to be trying to go back each week to kind of highlight some moments in the moments in the history. We won't start all the way back in the 1870s, but we will try to progressively pull in some nice moments and kind of highlight some of the big moments that really made college football which a premier game it is today.
My favorite part about the celebrating 150 years of college football is starting only about 100 years back.
Well, I mean, before then, we were playing in leather helmets, and it was mostly guys at Yale and Harvard playing this game.
And I think that's good, because we should not be giving credit to those guys at Yale and Princeton for playing Boys and Girls Club of St. Augustine or whatever every week.
Hey,
you go look in their schedule,
it's
like a military academy or something. It's just a bunch of nobodies, high schools.
It was a backyard scramble. That's what it was back then. Then it evolved, and they got organized rules.
I couldn't comment because, unlike Keyshawn, I didn't live through that era. So
he didn't either. But he was actually born in.
I don't have first-hand experience what it was like.
All right.
Okay, so I think we should wrap up talking about the Miami-Florida game.
Sure.
Okay. It's depending on where you look, I think so far it's been a roughly 7 to 8 point spread.
I got some.
Yeah, I think it's 7.
Do we feel like it'll be closer than that? Do we all feel like Florida's got this?
I got Florida by a touchdown. I mean, I'll give you a little analysis here. Felipe Franks, we don't really know. I mean, he's been there a while at Florida. I'm gonna just be honest with you. His confidence, you better come and bring it this year. Stay off Twitter, Felipe. Yeah, I'm talking to you, just like Dan Mullen was. Stay off Twitter and go play the game. Florida has had, over this summer, they've had players leave the program for various reasons. But the thing is, that's concerning to me. And I think all of that can get put behind them if they can go out here and win this game convincingly against Miami this week. And I mean, yes, it's the premier game of the week. But I believe that if Florida can go out and actually win, and I'm not just talking win by the spread, I'm talking like actually go out and dominate, I think that's going to put a lot of this conversation about how they have about all this transferring or what's going on at Florida, it's going to put all that to rest, and I think Dan Mullen regains the team.
Yeah, I pretty well agree with you. I think I'm picking 14 points for Florida. At least 14, probably more like 20. See, I don't think Florida's going to be much better than they were last year, and I don't think they were great last year. I think their quarterback play is going to be better. However, I think the transfers are going to kind of hold them back a little bit. But everything I've seen and heard suggests that Felipe Franks is going to be a lot better than he was last year. However, Miami might be great in the future with Mr. Manny Diaz. But first-year head coach, I don't see it being on the level of Florida or even improving from what they were last year. And last year they ended up not too great. I think I saw some stat about them being a pretty bad record, something like 4-13 in their last 17 games. No. How many games did they win? Did they win 4 last year? They didn't
Miami?
Win. May have been more.
Miami won 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Miami went 7-6.
Okay, I thought they were worse last year. Still not great. I don't think they're
They
going to
ended
improve
it.
that much. I think maybe year 2 they'll be good. I don't think they're going to be that good this year. And
My my only thing is this: Miami. Okay, we had the turnover chain. Come on, let me put that to rest. Miami needs to go out and play good football. I think Miami can go out. Mr. Manny Diaz, I think he can be a good coach. Do I think Miami has the potential in a couple of years to be a better team, or that team that we saw in 2017, I believe, to be very good? Sure. But the problem is Miami has got to establish a culture to where they can be able to dominate. It's just like Florida State. They have got to establish a culture within that team that to where they can be able to dominate and say that they're able to hang with either the ACC and their rivals within their state. This game right here, I don't think it's going to be that game. I think Manny Diaz is going to be trying to fill his legs, and he's going to be he's like sea legs basically. He's going to be basically trying to come in this game, see what he can do to hang with Florida, but Florida's ultimately going to pull away, and I think this is going to be over by the middle of the third quarter, just because Florida is going to control this game defensively, I believe. But as for offensively, I would like to see how Felipe Franks is going to put some points on the board, because if Felipe can actually get it open it up a little bit in the air, and Florida's running backs can kind of get a little grass under their feet, I think it's going to be a little bit better for Florida to be on offense. But the biggest thing from Florida last year was Florida won games by playing defense. They didn't win games by playing offense. Sure, they might have got down in the red zone by a lucky fumble or something, but I mean, honestly, I think it's going to come back to two things. Can Felipe Franks be better on offense and actually make plays? And can Florida's defense be as good or even better as they were last year to actually win?
So it sounds like we all agree on at least how we think this game will probably go. But does Florida have anything to gain from this game? Or it sort of feels like to me, Florida being ranked this high, Miami's unranked. Florida can only lose by either playing this game too close or losing outright.
I mean, I think Florida has everything to lose in this game, honestly.
I don't think so. I think if they lose this game and they can still manage to go and beat Georgia or anything like that, I think they're obviously fine. I don't think the season rides much on a week 0 game, a week before the regular season starts. They're playing a week early. Well, I just think their whole season a lot more so rests on October, whatever, end of October versus maybe beginning of November this year versus Georgia.
See, I disagree with you there, because going back to my comments earlier,
November 2nd.
I feel like here's my problem. Florida loses this game. I think that's going to be a message within the fan base, the locker room, everywhere, saying that, okay, we've got internal problems here. Something is bigger going on here than Dan Mullen. Something is bigger here going on here than just a team thing. We've had players leave. I forget how many commits left this summer, but that's the problem. If if Florida loses this game, I think that's going to set the tone for the season, and that they're going to be fighting an uphill battle going into the first part of the grind here, because I'm not looking at Florida's schedule right now, but I believe their first 3 games, they've got some pretty tough opponents right out the gate. So I think this is a big game, honestly, to me. I mean, if you look at it, I think that Florida has to win this game. Not that it's quote unquote a must win for the season, but I think it's a big game that's going to set the tone of the season and say that, hey, we're Florida and we're here to play, or hey, we're not. We've got some stuff going on inside the program.
Florida's gonna have a rough October. I don't. Their first several games, September won't be bad after the Miami game. They got Kentucky. That'll be rough. Now. They got Kentucky 2 weeks or 3 weeks after the Miami game because they have a bye week right after that. They got Tennessee Martin and then Tennessee. But in October they've got Auburn, then LSU, then South Carolina, at LSU and South Carolina, and then of course Georgia coming into November.
Yeah, home, away, and then neutral. Yeah, that'll be.
I'm looking at the schedule. I'm looking at the schedule right now. Yeah, Tennessee. Yeah, I don't think Tennessee's gonna. I think Tennessee's gonna contend.
I think they might be sneaky. I don't think on the level of beat Alabama sneaky, but I think they're going to beat some teams in the East that people aren't expecting them to.
I mean,
Pruitt is very. I don't know how he is as a head coach, but Pruitt is a great football mind.
Sure.
So here's what I would say about this Miami game.
Yeah.
I think if Miami is able to come out and win, which none of us think is, we don't expect it. If Miami comes out and wins, I think it's a big chip in their favor, and it's a big flag the ACC can wave later.
Huge for Miami.
If things keep going the way they have recently, the ACC's had this, we can beat the SEC. We can beat the SEC when we go head to head. If Miami starts the season off beating Florida, number 8 Florida, in the only game that's going to be on, I think it'll matter later.
I think it's bigger for the ACC, bigger for the SEC,
yes,
but not that big for Florida. I don't think Florida will.
I agree. I think that's fair. I think Florida controls its own fate.
But yeah, I mean, hey, it's going to go down. I mean, I think it's going to be one of the better games that we're going to see early off in the season. I mean, hey, it's not a ranked game, but 6:00 on ESPN Saturday night. That's
how excited are you for a game this big, week 0, man?
That's just awesome. It's football, baby.
I know it was a reschedule, but it's awesome, man. It's so much better than UCF playing Pitt in Australia or some crap like that a few years ago.
Wait, are you saying you're more excited for this than Arizona at Hawaii?
I am. I'm gonna be happy that's still happening because I will want to stay up and keep watching football. But yeah, I'm more excited.
That game starts at 9:30, by the way. So
yeah, we'll be up.
It'll put you to bed.
It probably will, because if I remember, Hawaii was pretty bad last year. I'm gonna double check it, but
welcome back to football, boys.
I believe the Rainbow Warriors were not good at football last year.
So obviously the SEC's real perception problem is going to come in towards the middle of the season when Keshawn goes all in on the Notre Dame beating Georgia at home in Athens.
Hey, we're gonna see, man. We're gonna see.
That's when it's really gonna happen. You can flesh that out a little more next week when we focus in on the SEC preview for the season. I feel like that's a good place to leave it. Is there anything else we want to say?
Sure. Let's get some final thoughts. Do y'all have let's do like a quick minute. Final thoughts. Anybody got anything?
No.
My final thoughts are: we already had a good place to end it, and then you asked for final thoughts.
You just had to get rented, didn't he?
Sorry. Hey, we can cut that out.
Well, we can, but I think we should leave it in.
Absolutely.
No, the one big thing I will say is going into week 0, whatever that is.
He's creating a big thing to cover it up.
The thing is, I will say we're going to see a lot. I mean, we're not going to see a lot of football, but we will see a lot of this ACC SEC battle with the ACC network launching today. I think that's going to have a lot of morale type deal on, how the SEC trying to steal the SEC thunder all through football season, because what does the ACC have in football? Clemson, that's it. I mean, they don't really have much. So my big thing is SEC better come out swinging this season to prove that they are better than the ACC, or the ACC better come out and try to contend with the SEC to say that, hey, we're a good conference as well.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I'm ready to get over this NFL preseason crap where no one's trying to win and we're watching 4th string people who aren't going to be on the team in a month. I'm ready to watch people hit each other.
Back.
I'm ready to see competition, man. I'm here for it.
Do either of y'all have the ACC network?
Back.
I guess I do. Is it on DirecTV?
I don't. You got DirecTV, you do.
I didn't take any active steps to get it, but I'm sure I do.
Yeah, it just pops up somewhere. All right, boys, that's going to do it for this time on Snap, Tackle, and Pop. Snap, Tackle, and Flop.
Anything to add, Tyler?
Have a great night.